Hello folks, today I'm going to be doing a more typical devlog style video because in the past week I've implemented a few noteworthy things and I think it'd be fun just to go through them and check it out. The first thing that I wanted to touch on is the camera. Now in my game I've had a camera implemented pretty much from the start because honestly you'd be hard pressed to find a game out there that doesn't have some kind of camera. But every level I've shown so far on YouTube has been pretty much the same where it's a horizontally moving camera. So for example, when I move left and right, the camera will follow the player, but when the player moves vertically, nothing happens. I can jump in place like this, but the camera's not moving. It's fixed on the y-axis, but the x-axis can still move, which makes the level more horizontally oriented. And then honestly, I'm pretty sure most levels in my game are going to be set up just like this, where I'm trying to move all the way from the left side of the level to the right in order to complete it. But I mentioned in an earlier video that I do want every level to have some kind of gimmick to it. Something to set the level apart. And I was thinking that changing the orientation of the level, at least by using the camera, would be enough to set the level apart. What I mean is instead of having a level that's fixed on the y-axis and moves on the x-axis, we could have a level that's flipped, where it moves vertically and moving left and right doesn't change the camera at all. This would make it a vertical level, meaning the player would have to move up or down the level in order to get to the destination. And I successfully implemented that. So here on this level, it's obviously incomplete, it's just for demonstration purposes, but when I move left and right, the camera does not move at all, it stays right in place. But when I move up, like jump, it starts following the player. So the goal here is that for this particular level, I could build some vertical structure that the player has to climb up, and that could be the whole gimmick of the level. Or possibly even another level could be where you have to go down the level. So you start at the very top and you have to navigate through enemies or dive or do a bunch of stuff in order to make it to the bottom. And since I designed all of my levels in tiled, I made it so that the camera can be configured in tiled as well. I know that this is very small, but over here in the custom properties, I have a fixed X property. Now I have two properties that I created that you can configure. There's fixed X and fixed Y. Here I have fixed X set to 496. Now that means that the camera's X position will always be set to 496. It is not going to be following the player on the X axis at all. But I didn't specify a fixed Y. If I would have, it would have been stuck at that pixel value as well. So in this particular level, the X position of the camera is stuck at 496, but the Y position can change vertically. And that's what makes this level a vertical level because the camera stays motionless left and right, but it can go up and down. Looking at the left and right moving level that we started with, the fixed Y property is set here to 128. So the Y property of the camera will never change from 128 on this particular level. This level here takes it a step further in that the fixed X and fixed Y values are not set whatsoever. Since neither of them are set, that means that the camera can move completely free, where it just follows the player wherever they go. And this is what this level looks like when I play it. I can move left and right, and obviously the camera follows them, but also moving up and down causes the camera to move, so I can move anywhere in this level and it'll always follow the player. And on a code level, the way that this works is very simple. The fixed X and fixed Y properties are passed in directly from the tiled map, and then we use that value to determine where the camera should be looking. So in cam update, you can see we start by getting the position of the player, and then we'll check to see, is the camera.fixed X position set to anything other than -1. I chose -1 as just some default value, where if it's -1, that means it's not set at all. So this line here is basically asking, is the fixed X property set? And if it is, then we're just going to change the camera's X position to the fixed X value. And we do the exact same thing right here with the Y position. We change cam Y, and then here we are changing the actual position of the camera to match what we set it to. Therefore, on this level, since neither of them are set, that means that both of the X and Y positions are being set directly to whatever the player's position is. So having this flexibility with the camera is really nice, both for level gimmicks and just whenever I want to add some variety to any of my levels. Speaking of levels, there's one other thing that I wanted to mention, and it has to do with these doors. Now, the way I planned out my game setup is that every level will be accessed via some door that looks like this orange door right here. But I also want the player to have the ability to see their stats on this level, say what collectibles they found on the level or what their best time was, since time trials is a big part of this game. So I came up with this cool solution that when you approach a door, it drops down this little info panel at the top and it shows you some stats. Right now it just shows the level name, the best time, and the time to beat, But I'm going to flesh this out, make it look nicer, but overall this is a very useful feature that I plan to implement in the final game. What I also love about this is that it's automatic, so if I move off, it goes away. Right when I go back on, it comes back. And it reads this data directly from what door ID it is. So this one goes to level 1-1, so therefore it shows us the time for that level and the level name for 1-1, of course. But if I go over here, I have a second door, and this one goes to 1-2. Therefore, when I access this one, it shows level 1-2, shows the best time for that level and the time to beat for this one specifically. Now, the way that this works is a little bit more complex. I have every object that can be interacted with now have the ability to accept some auto interact function. So the door here, for example, has an auto interact function, and you'll see that all it does is it calls the infopanel.toggle function. Now, infopanel is just the name that I gave to this panel that slides up and down that shows you the stats on the level. But what toggle does right here is it changes it from being visible to invisible, and it slides it back up and down depending on the appropriate scenario. So whenever we toggle the info panel, we change its visibility to the opposite, where if it was not visible, this value becomes true, and if it was true, then it becomes false. Then this code right here is going to help start the tween. Now, I've talked about tweens before, but what a tween does is it gradually changes some value to another value. So here we can see that we're changing the Y value of the info panel to a different Y value. And I have two set up. I have Y visible, which is where the info panel is when it's visibly on screen. And then I also have Y hidden, which is where the info panel lives when it's above the screen and it can't be seen at all. And then here at the bottom, I'm trying to show it so my camera's not covering it. This line here is just creating our tween to move the panel up or down depending on what we set in the previous lines. And also we're easing with a cubic out easing type. And the way that the info panel is drawn is pretty straightforward at the moment. I'll probably flesh it out a little bit more as it gets more complex. But first it starts with a check for if self.y plus self.height times scale is less than 0, then return. Now what this line means is that when the info panel is above the screen and it can't be seen whatsoever, we're just going to exit this infopanel.draw function entirely. There's no point in drawing the info panel if it's above the screen and it can't be seen whatsoever, so we might as well save ourselves some processing power just automatically. Then down here is what happens when the info panel actually does want to be drawn, and you can see that we have a self.format. Now what the format property is going to do is it determines what style of info panel we're going to draw. Obviously right now we only have one, it's the type level. But if I wanted to adapt the info panel to be used for something other than just these doors, it would be very easy. All I have to do is create a new if section that does a whole different type of drawing. But for this one, the drawing is very simple. First we draw the panel itself, which is like that black and white background box. And then over top of it, we are printing a bunch of text, the level title, the best time, and then the time to beat. Now, again, there's going to be more interesting stuff that I'm going to be displaying in the final version, but this is a good start to demonstrate what I wanted to do. And that about covers up everything that I wanted to show you from the past week. Be sure to subscribe if you enjoyed. I post content about game dev every single week, and I really appreciate you watching to the end. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.